but it's something that is required by everybody, and it's always, in my opinion, it's a daily sort of thinking process that every entrepreneur needs to be thinking about. It sort of gives us an ability to think differently, creatively, and to improve and accelerate what we're doing in business and in life, I guess, which is interesting. So we did a quick chat earlier today, Taylor and and I actually shared. I remember. I don't know. No, I just want to say that for just a quick moment. Tim Ferriss. I don't know if anybody knows Tim Ferriss. He's an American guy that does all sorts of weird things, but in the past he had a TV show about hacking things. And so I recommend you guys look up his show. What was the name of it, Taylor? Is it Experiments or something?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. If you look up Tim Ferriss TV show, you should be able to find it.
And I thought I found the actual video before. No, if I do, I'll share it with everybody on the Slack. So that's definitely cool. But anyway, it's besides the point. Just diving in and handing it over to Taylor. I just wanted to point you guys to the Slack channel, to the specific Blockchain One and Maccabi Haifa. I wrote a message yesterday about what you guys need to do to prepare for the mid program, which is next week in New York and in Haifa, respectively. So please make sure you go through it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, ping me privately or look the general channel. It's required. I mean, in Haifa, you guys are going to go on and talk a little bit about your business and share a few slides. In New York, it's going to be slightly different.
I'll just use mine.
But all right, there's multiple people joining. Taylor, you're using.
Yeah, let me handle that. I invited some of my interns to watch and
right.
Mute. So.
Well, yeah, it's okay. I muted them now, but yeah, if you can.
Okay.
No, afterwards, that's cool if they unmute themselves. So anyway, so just to wrap that up, let me know if it's not clear. Otherwise, it's exciting. We're looking forward to seeing you guys at the mid program next week. Enough about me. Taylor is an expert growth hacker, and he will explain who he is, and we'll take it from there. So thanks, Taylor, and thank you for coming today, and take it from here, and good luck.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. I'm going to move really quickly. I only have about half an hour to go through this stuff, and the idea is I wanted to kind of give like the sampler pack or a little taste of everything so that it doesn't matter if you're B2C, B2B to C, or B2B. I want to make sure that you have a little bit of everything. So there's a lot to cover, and if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I'll be sure to make sure that you have all the slides and you're able to kind of check out the notes, because I put a ton of stuff inside the notes of these as well. I will be bouncing around a bit, so bear with me if you get vertigo. I don't know. That's on you. So my name is Taylor. I'm the CMO of a company called Valuer.ai. We connect startups with corporations, and I'm sure there's a number of interesting startups within kind of this segment. So feel free to jump on to Valuer.ai and see more about us. I've co-founded personally 6 startups, 11 years of experience. I write a ton of content and have published a few ebooks, consulted on SEO and SCM for 4 years prior to moving to Copenhagen. And I consider myself kind of a mentor, startup junkie, technical marketer, growth hacker, all those fun kind of buzzwords. So one of the things that I like to kind of throw out there is, I was on a reality television show called House Hunters International, and it was basically about me moving to Denmark. You can Google that or look it up on YouTube. Due to the fancy editing of the folks over at the HDTV channel, they make me look like a total douche, so enjoy. So without further ado, my goal for today is to provide as much value as possible, and hopefully, again, people, regardless of the industry sector or the business model, will be able to get something out of this. So one of the things that I consistently have to explain to people, I teach a number of growth hacking courses within just Copenhagen, and it's very difficult to explain why growth hacking isn't taught in schools, because most of it is learning by doing. It's the concept of, if you take your car to a mechanic and there's one mechanic that says, well, I've read at least 5 years worth of books on how to fix a car. And another guy says, I've actually been fixing cars, and everything within your individual automobile I can fix because I've done it before. I want the second guy to fix my car. The idea is there's a lot more out there in terms of getting experience versus all the theories in the world. And I want to go over some of those as we kind of go through this. But another way to think of it is kind of marketing is all about systems, right? So the concept is what you can learn within, let's say, content, you can start applying to SEO and SEM and social media. So it only really takes a little bit of an understanding to start applying across these different areas. Very similar to folks that have done development. Once you understand one framework, one language, you can start applying those learnings to others. So there's a lot of different definitions about growth hacking. This is the one that I pulled from Wikipedia. My definition is basically doing the most with limited funds, limited time, and getting the biggest results, the biggest impact. That's the concept. So how can we do more with less? So something that I also want to preempt people is the concept of, I'm going to go over a ton of tools here, and be aware that the amount of tools is constantly growing. And I know you can't see past this. This was kind of one of those graphics that they first put out in 2011 of like the landscape of marketing tools. And as you go through the years, you start to realize how absurd it actually gets. So this is 2014. And if I click through 2019, and it is an absolute mess. So there's going to be tools that I omit, and there's going to be tools that maybe I'm not even aware of, because there are literally thousands out there to fix everything within kind of your marketing funnel, within outreach, everything. So I want to jump into, I want to jump into some other stuff. And again, it's kind of the concept of giving you quick wins you can immediately implement. But the concept here is also fulfilling the concept of prioritization. So what is a priority for you? I consistently have to explain this 80-20 rule. This is the Pareto principle. So in terms of like content, right? 20% of your content is going to drive 80% of your traffic. And this Pareto principle, 80-20 rule is throughout life. So 80% of your customers are going to end up having only 20% of your questions, and vice versa. Or in life, like let's say 20% of the population drinks 80% of the alcohol. And you're going to see this throughout a lot of the things that you're doing in terms of measurements online with not only conversions, but also traffic. So one of the more interesting things that I found from Brian Dean of Backlinko, if you're looking for a really great growth hacking blog, Backlinko is probably the number one in my book. But 57.8%, this is an average, of most websites is organic. The idea is that you get significantly less off of Facebook, YouTube, with us, LinkedIn as well. The concept is if you're putting the amount of time in as it actually produces results, then you should be doing that across different channels. So if you're only getting 3% traffic out of LinkedIn, then maybe only spend 3% of your time there. I think doubling down on channels that don't absolutely work for you is obviously a waste of time. So I wanted to go into some of the ways that you can measure these. Everybody has different ways of looking at it. KPIs, key performance indicators. Analytics is going to tell you a lot. I do a whole presentation about the recent algorithm updates, and I'm not going to be able to show that today, but things have totally flipped on their side within the last 3 months. It's wild. I'm a huge proponent of using Search Console to see how well certain keywords are ranking. Ahrefs is my favorite tool, and I'm in there probably 5 times a day, too much. And there's some other tools in there, Moz, SEMrush, or SEMrush as some people call it. But the idea is that you need to figure out what is the most important thing to focus on. For me, it's conversions, right? Is somebody willing to buy? And of those conversions, how many people are actually turning into real customers? Because it's all about money at the end of the day. So I am going to jump around a bit on this, but just bear with me. I want to show a couple of quick foundational hacks. So if you're a relatively early startup, there are tons of free websites out there for basically posting your brand, your company, whatever niche that you're in. So the idea is I basically have listings, directories, and reviews kind of all cobbled together in the same fashion. The idea is I want people to discover me where they're already going to look for people like me or companies like me. And if you Google the phrase listing sites, or long list of listing sites, directories, etc., you'll find thousands of these. And this is a way that if you have very little traffic to begin with and nothing in the way of really domain authority or domain rating that's super low, then start actually building these profiles. The concept is you can actually offload this. So on Upwork, there's plenty of people that are called virtual assistants, and you can pay them upwards of $4. And the idea is basically give them kind of a very brief segment in terms of directions, and these are the company info and descriptions, and start registering off of my list. And you'd be surprised how well that works, and it actually starts boosting traffic and gets you more visual, more visits, more opportunities, more everything. And I actually have a list inside of this particular slide if you're really interested in doing some of that. Some of the stuff that I really get excited about is the whole concept of content and what makes an amazing piece of content. I'm sure a lot of people in here are aware there's this great explainer video from Dollar Shave Club that basically propelled them into wild success. And it wasn't that novel of a concept. They sell razors for shaving your face. And what they did was essentially put together a very simple explainer video that had some humor in it. And within 3 years, these guys were sold for $1 billion with a B. It's fucking ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. So if you want to watch that video, it's in the slides here. I'm going to jump around just a touch and show one other example of this, maybe two. So this was a competitor to one of the companies I worked for when I first came to Denmark, and they're called When I Work, hourly shift software, not the sexiest thing in the world. They created a very long list of basically team building games that anybody can get involved with. And what you have here is an understanding of like how well this worked out for them. 3.6 million views. The idea is that I'm working my ass off over here at Valuer, and I'll tell you right now, I won't get half of 1 million views with all the content that we put out. Sometimes one amazing piece of content does everything for you, and it can be an absolute game changer. So think about content in that fashion. I think that's one hell of a hack. Last little hack within content, because I can see I'm already like almost halfway through my time, is the skyscraper technique. This was also from Backlinko. This guy, Brian Dean, basically built this novel approach to making new content by either borrowing it from others or making an original piece better based on, your competitors. So the idea is basically I'll pull up Ahrefs, and this is Valuer. I can see top content in here, and I can do this for any site. So the idea is that it basically gets you access to see the top pieces of content based on referring domains and its social engagement. The idea is if we wrote the best 50 startup cities in 2019 blog article, and I'm a competitor of my company, I want to write the 75 best startup cities in 2019. Instead of 50 examples of corporations that failed to innovate, maybe it's 100. And funny enough, CB Insights, who is kind of a loose competitor of us, has already done that. They skyscraped us. And it's a vicious game. But the idea of this is you're beating your competitors at their best piece of content, potentially outranking them at what they do best. Think of it in a sports analogy. You're taking their best player out of the game. It's baller. It totally works. And I stand by it. It's a hell of a technique. I got to skip through some of this stuff, but I'm happy to come back at some point and talk more about it. I wanted to show some of the outbound tools because I think there's so much value in this. The concept is if you don't have a lot of traffic coming in and you're not able to target your customers in anything in the way of kind of a paid vicinity, I want to show you some really quick wins that will do gangbusters for you. So the idea is you have to get the process down first. I know I'm going to jump around again, but I love these GIFs. So you have to get methodical, right? And the idea is you need to target, discover, validate the emails, and do a ton of outreach. It's basically this whole concept of a marketing funnel, right? The more stuff you put in, hopefully at the bottom, that turns into a deal or money in the door. So some of the different ways that you can target, I use Google Sheets to basically do a bit of a mind map almost. And the idea is I'm going after job titles, I'm segmenting by the specific area which they're working, and I'm using buzzwords to be able to search. If you use LinkedIn Navigator, this is exceptionally helpful by creating different segments and then hitting these people using the tools that I'm going to show you in a second. The whole idea here is a structured approach that you can continue to tweak as you move forward is going to pay dividends. So some of the tools for discovery, and these things are popping up left, right, and center. Snav is kind of like the new kid on the block, and it's crazy good, and it does everything. Wasn't around a year ago. DataJar is not bad, Find That Lead, and some of these others are okay. The idea is that this allows you to basically discover new potential contacts to do direct emails out to. It is GDPR compliant. The way that you have to do this is basically mention where you got their email, which is, I found I found your email through looking for people that might be interested in my service, and you have to add an unsubscribe link. And the way that I reduce the amount of people that unsubscribe is I just hit the enter button a bunch of times in my template, so the unsubscribe button is buried. It's really low. It's totally GDPR compliant, and the only reason that it wouldn't be is if you're sending emails out to people that are personal emails. So that's a Gmail or a Yahoo or something like that. These are just a few of the data discovery or email discovery tools out there. There are tons more. So the whole concept is, now that you have all these emails, you have to clean them. A lot of these platforms are guessing the best email. They basically have acknowledged, like, okay, the structure of this one employee was first initial, last name, at company, domain.com, whatever. The problem is they're not all perfect, and a lot of them go bad. So the idea is you need to basically reduce your bounces so that your emails don't permanently end up in the spam folder. A lot of these tools are relatively inexpensive. Some are more expensive than others. I personally use NeverBounce pretty often, but it's kind of up to you. There are going to be false positives and false negatives, meaning sometimes it identifies something that is actually a working email address or not, and basically says, yeah, it's good. So the idea of outreach is really simple. Instead of a one-for-one approach, which for whatever reason most people do, everybody defaults back to kind of the lazy, like, well, fuck it, I'm going to do it my way and send out one email at a time. It's a giant waste of time. I don't do that. So the concept is 150 to 300 contacts in each segmented group, and then I want to sequence 3 different emails across to each of them. So instead of sending one at a time, I'm sending 300, 300, and 300. And the concept is all of these tools allow for a sequenced approach. Lemlist has been around for only about a year and a half. Massive success. It's a baller tool. Highly recommended. Snav is basically on a par with them. Really cheap and a great tool to use. If you're really focused on keeping everything within your Gmail, you can certainly use both of those. Gmass has been around forever. Same with Mailshake. But just something to think about. I'm going to go into some of the other kind of areas of that later, but in essence of time, I'm moving. One of my favorite tools for booking is using Calendly. The whole point of sending out these emails usually is to try to book a meeting. Now, sometimes maybe you're trying to promote a piece of content or an event, whatever the case is, you have to kind of play around with this stuff. And sometimes it's okay to send out an email that's to the effect of, hey, just wanted you to be aware of us, not asking for anything, check us out. And that actually works sometimes, which is pretty badass. But the concept is you need to make sure that you're building a funnel. So using Pipedrive or Close.io is going to help this process exponentially. Pipedrive is kind of one of my favorites. It's continuing to evolve over time, but it syncs automatically with Gmail. And the concept is you can basically pull in these deals as soon as people respond, which builds your funnel almost automatically. It's pretty awesome. I definitely recommend personalization. I'll show an example of that coming up. For those that aren't looking necessarily for outbound and are looking for stuff inbound, Drip and Drift. I mean, Drift has come out of nowhere, and they're fantastic. There's a ton of other tools that basically help your users throughout, whether it's a platform. Intercom has kind of been around forever, but they're fantastic. But Drift is certainly something you should check out. None of these are cheap, though. Just a heads up, they're wildly expensive. But for those that have a nice platform, I always recommend Mixpanel because you can basically build funnels off of this and measure how users are engaged with your platform, what features they're getting involved with, which features they aren't using, and it's not super overpriced. So definitely recommend Mixpanel. So some of the templates and guides that are in this slide, I'm going to back out just for a second, are incredibly useful. The stuff that is put out through Lemlist in terms of their blog is amazing. So they allow you to insert GIFs via email. And the concept is using merge fields. You can say, go for coffee, insert first name, Bradley, Taylor, David, whatever. That personalization makes people think, oh my God, this is amazing. They made something just for me. It's like, no, you fucking moron. Like, I made it for 300 people. But the idea is that little touch, that little personalization element actually gets a hell of a lot more engagement. So inside of this slide, I show a ton of different examples. I really like the Lemlist usage of GIFs. It's amazing. I get this email all the time. It's once every like 2 to 3 months. But the concept is basically this old template of, I noticed you hadn't responded in my first 2 emails. 1, you're not interested. Thanks, and just let me know if that's the case. 2, maybe you're not the right person and I should be speaking with somebody else within your organization. Or 3, you're being chased by a hippo and you need me to call for help. Make sure to respond. And those gimmicky things actually work. It's sometimes tough to be funny, but man, that stuff works. It's crazy. A couple of quick social media hacks for those that are really into messing with social media. There are a number of really cool ways to start uncovering content that works via social proof and basically resharing it as fresh and new via you. So the first one I'm going to show you out of this group, and there's plenty of others, I want to show Reddit because I think it's such a baller way of doing things. So Reddit. And the idea is Reddit is basically like a social proof platform. The idea of social proof is it's validated by a huge audience. So let's say, because everybody here is into sports, I am going to Google the word sport. Google. I'm going to search for the word sport, and I'm going to break it down by the last month. Anything that ranks around here should be shared across your social media if your target audience is really into sports, because it's already been validated by those that are into this niche. So the concept is if people continue to engage with the stuff that's on your social channels, every once in a while you slip in something that's like, hey, here's a guide, and also we sell this product. Maybe you should actually buy it. You'd be surprised. The idea is success begets success. So put out stuff that actually works. And this is a validation mechanism, basically. All of these can be used as you please. But yeah, plenty of other ways to go into that. But in the essence of time, I'm moving on. One of my favorite hacks that I've seen more recently that's super baller, I go into deep detail on this. The concept is joining hundreds of groups. And essentially the goal is to try to take converting conversations and get people to engage. Once it meets a maximum threshold, it's usually rough around like the 75 mark in terms of engagements, comments. Then the idea is that you can edit that post within the group. So let's say the post is, what is a good weakness to mention on a job interview, right? And everybody's answering and it's getting lots of engagement. Then you change the entire comment or the post itself to say, has anybody heard of the name of your company? I hear it's pretty badass. And the thing is, people actually think that that was the original post. So you're essentially kind of doing this bait and switch, and it totally works. And as far as I'm concerned right now, nobody really has a mechanism for stopping that. So it's a really interesting trick that a lot of people are using to basically boost a lot of traffic to their sites. I do a ton of stuff on LinkedIn. I include kind of a simpler version down here, but the idea is you need to boost as much engagement as possible. That whole platform is based on engagement. Whenever you see some of these people that have 50 to 100 plus engagements, meaning likes, comments, whatever, it's built over time, but success begets success. The ideal number of hashtags is always going to be 3, at least for the time being. Likes aren't as valuable as they used to be. Shares are even less. Comments are kind of the big thing. And the idea is that it actually is a little bit of street cred for you if you continue to comment on other people's stuff. And it doesn't have to be anything lengthy. It's surprising how much that actually boosts the engagement. Commenting on every comment keeps boosting your post up somebody's feed. So if they haven't seen your thing yet and you continue to comment on other people's stuff, it continues to boost kind of the engagement and number of impressions. The new connections that you make will see your stuff for the first week and then eventually fade out. So remember to comment on their stuff. Again, this takes time. A lot of virtual assistants actually do this for $4 an hour, so something to consider there. You could give access to your LinkedIn. There's a lot of really interesting things that are happening in terms of what they call pods. The idea is basically the first hour is this golden period where if you get more engagements during the hour, LinkedIn opens it up to give you tons more impressions. So people join Slack channels where everybody has to like and comment on each other's stuff. Normally kind of the magic number is like 10, 15 people. And this thing catches on like wildfire. It's really interesting. So first hour, most crucial, most important. I don't know. I'm going to move on, but one other quick thing. Videos, in terms of the amount of impressions and engagement, has been turned way down. I don't understand why, but for whatever reason, slides, so basically uploading a PDF, and images is back up. Crazy. I'm sure a lot of you are working on something that has to do with influencer marketing. People overpay like crazy for this stuff. I don't have enough time to go into each of these, but just be aware that there's a ton of discovery mechanisms for finding influencers within your niche that are targeting the right people within the right either locations or the right segments. There's a company called Tonsner out of Copenhagen that basically built their entire community, over 1 million people at this point, off of just marketing to influencers. It's a really clever way to basically boost a lot of people into your product, your platform. We messed around with this a little bit. I got really excited. This is Dr. Nakamatsu. Tons of documentaries about this dude. He's super interesting. He goes scuba diving and turns down his oxygen, and then that's where his ideas come from. Fucking crazy. He invented the floppy disk. So we wrote an article that was basically like 25 eccentric entrepreneurs. This guy ended up DMing us back saying like, hey, how do you do? Super cool. I was like, I've used the floppy disk. Amazing. So it's fun. I'm going to link to this in the slides, but basically you never know where this stuff comes from. This was my most engaged post. You can see down there 622 likes, 42 comments, 39,000 impressions, views. It's a video. It's a video of me biking to work in Copenhagen. You have no idea how much fucking time I've spent creating amazing content just to have this video outrank everything. Sometimes it's just, you never know where lightning strikes, and this just happened to be it. I can't explain it. I don't know why this works so well, but it did. So just bear in mind what you put out on social media. Even though you have the best of intentions, it doesn't always work. So I do want to go into an extreme growth hack, but I want to make sure I save time for questions. So in the essence of that, I don't know, maybe on the next one I can show you how to do some really cool LinkedIn hacks, but I want to save a few moments for questions. So yeah, I think that's all I have time for the time being.
Yeah, you actually did less than, you finished less than half an hour, because I took 4 minutes into the session. So, and I know there's a lot of stuff you can still go through. So let's see how many questions we have. And then if we don't have that many or whatever, then you can continue maybe talking about some of the other topics. And I personally think that LinkedIn would be quite useful for everybody. But any questions out there, guys? Do you want to, maybe I'll make everybody, if everybody's comfortable, I'll make everybody panelists so we can see everybody. And then you can just, like we normally do, you can then slowly unmute yourself and just ask away, obviously in turns. Sorry, guys, make sure you're available for it and ready for it. You don't have to, obviously, put your videos on. It's preferred. So yeah. So any questions out there?
A lot of beards so far.
So what?
I said a lot of beards going on so far. I feel like I'm outmatched, outflanked in the beard section.
Just means they work more hours. They sleep less.
That's true. Less time.
Yeah, I can hear you, Lawrence.
So first of all, thank you, because it was brilliant. Loving it. A quick question. In terms of full-time equivalent, how many people you need to lead all those streams?
Well, that's a actually really great question. So Copenhagen has kind of a different way of working. So a lot of students are required to do internships. So I actually have a team of 30. So they're all they're all watching. So yeah, it's one of those things that this is how you kind of sub out a lot of that extra work, is virtual assistants. And, it takes a little bit of time to kind of set them up and create the guidelines, but you'd be surprised how well that works. A lot of this stuff is manual tasks that interns can absolutely do and will value the time that it takes for you to actually teach them and them to get experience learning. But it all comes down to prioritization, right? So what matters more to you and what seems to be working best for your product?
So the best you will recommend is to actually go for externalization for a startup. Like this, you can manage your costs without the payroll and the headcount.
Yeah, definitely, at least early on, right? So for gathering emails of potential decision makers, you don't necessarily need to bring on somebody full-time to do that. It's almost idiot-proof in terms of using LinkedIn Navigator or any of the other tools that I've shown there. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I wouldn't necessarily bring people on full-time just for that.
We were not able a year ago to leverage a very good, interesting thing, having a kind of a sport athlete and betting what we are doing, and I don't want to redo the same mistake.
I get it. I think we've all been there. But the concept is sometimes I think taking more things off your own plate in order for you to make better decisions and in the long run spend more time on things that are important. It makes all the difference in the world. So yeah, I mean, sometimes virtual assistants is the answer. Sometimes it's a marketer to manage 5, 10 virtual assistants, or it's interns.
But thank you again. Very, very interesting.
Well, thank you.
Great.
That's all on my side.
It's what?
Anybody else?
I said that's all on my side. That was the only question I had.
Right. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's cool. Any other questions, guys? Feel free to ask
Yeah.
away.
Hi, this is Rami. What is the for?
Maybe Rami, just do the regular stuff, like do a quick one-liner pitch, like what you do.
Okay, we have a platform that allows you to share your knowledge and skill via live video, voice, or chat. Right now, influencers use it to monetize, and it's for brands too that can build a vertical around the activity they are doing. So my question is, what the average retainer to start that kind of campaign that you're running?
Depends on your budget, right? So, I mean, it's always dependent on the budget. So if you're looking to do direct outreach to decision makers, I mean, a lot of these tools are borderline free. So let me pull up some of these tools that I went through here. So Snav, I have them down here in terms of pricing. Snav is like super reasonable at $49 a month, and you basically get 5,000 contacts. It also allows you to do outreach along with that. Just to show you what the outreach looks like, it's incredibly user-friendly. Like, these guys have figured it out. So the idea is that you can sequence everything out. You can also basically set up triggers. So the idea is if they open the email and click on a link, that's a different trigger. So they get a different email. So you're basically giving them what is essentially a custom experience. And they think there's somebody live over there saying, hey, I thought I saw that you clicked on that pricing page in the last email. Maybe you might be open to having a quick conversation. I'm willing to give you a good deal. All of a sudden you're in it, So it really depends on your budget, but you need at least something to spend on this, and Snav is very affordable for $49 a month.
Mm-hmm. And you're, as an agency, you're building the whole funnel or just the execution?
Yeah, that's so. So I'm a marketer. I'm a marketer for a company that connects startups with corporations. So I'm not selling anything, unless you want to get on our platform and potentially be connected with a large corporation. But my thing is, in terms of working with agencies, I think 80 to 90% of them are full of shit. And most of the stuff that you end up getting out of an agency, you could have done in-house, and you probably should do in-house because you lose the learnings, right? If you have a really powerful marketing team that continues to build their own campaigns, continues to learn from their mistakes, they're going to be impenetrable in the matter of maybe a year to 2 years. So I would never hire out for 99% of the stuff that we do here.
Okay, great, thanks.
I hope that was, I don't know, was that the answer to your question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Anything else, guys? No other questions? Surprising. Sometimes people are sleepy, and
It's all good. Well, we talked about this earlier. If people want to jump on like a short 15-minute call to kind of ask more specific questions, I'm totally down for that, and I can share my 15-minute calendar link with Tomer, and yeah, I'm happy to provide some free advice if people need it.
Great. I think if you want to, I mean, obviously we can take more questions in, but I think if you don't mind, because we still have time in the webinar, it's a waste to, it's a shame to not touch on some other areas. So I know that you had something to talk about LinkedIn, and maybe I guess my perspective would be also, I don't know if you have slides for it, but I mean, if you are able to touch on some of the topics on like the sales funnel or setting up a sales pipeline or things like that is obviously strategically, not practically.
Sure. I want to show what's possible. The idea is that a lot of people maybe are apprehensive about dipping their toes in the water, and a lot of this stuff does take time to set up, but it does almost run itself. And this is kind of an extreme version of that. It touches on some gray hat stuff as well. So if you're into kind of getting your hands dirty, this is definitely the hack for you. So the concept is I want to pull off as many contacts from LinkedIn as possible for specific people that are within my industry that I know they're going to make the buying decision. So the things that you're going to need for this is a VPN to basically make sure that you're shielded. You're going to have to create a brand new LinkedIn account because I don't want you to damage the reputation of your own. And the idea is that you probably also want to use an original email address or an old one where you can pull contacts in so it looks like the LinkedIn account has been around for a while. This is going to cost you about $80 per month using Sales Navigator, and then $15 on top of that for a tool called Linked Helper. Linked Helper is a baller tool. It basically allows you to use LinkedIn on steroids. So the concept is scraping all of the details from every single profile, and it allows for kind of a sequence of that, taking 8 seconds here, 3 seconds there, 1 second there of viewing these profiles. So it's basically camouflaged and you don't see it. And additionally, if you wanted to really bolster that LinkedIn account to connect with a bunch of people and make it seem like a different person, then you would do that. I have a bunch of fake LinkedIn accounts. They're named after my brother and my favorite sandwich. So let's move into it. So the reason that you would create a new LinkedIn account is because there are tons of tools that are recently banned by LinkedIn. The idea is LinkedIn back in like 2015 said, no more open APIs. People are screwing us. They're messing our stuff up. So I link in this section here to all the extensions that have been banned by LinkedIn. The idea was too many people were automating the outreach, too many people were scraping too much details and they couldn't control it, so they banned it, which is crazy. So I would not necessarily recommend all these tools. I do think that Linked Helper is okay in small doses, but any of these used at scale will potentially get an account banned. That's why you use a fake account. Lucia's baller as well. I like that one a lot. And Duck Soup was kind of my first introduction to this. So let's go into this. So the idea is that this is a view. Let me see if I can move that. Yeah, this is a view of Linked Helper. The concept is it allows you to basically do a filter of like, I want people specifically in this country. I want these job titles. I want these words in their profile, and they have to be from large organizations. You hit the collect button and it builds a list automatically, visiting each profile, again, at a different sequence. So one time it's 3 seconds, one time it's 8 seconds. That way, again, camouflages itself from you ever getting caught using one of these extensions. So the next thing is that you have to download this massive list of profiles that you've just scraped. Really easy to do that. You upload or basically copy and paste that entire list. LinkedIn has tried to kind of countermeasure this by giving the URL with a different URL. It's linkedinnavigator.profile. So we have to change that. So using a really awesome tool called Phantom Buster, and I could literally spend hours talking about how awesome Phantom Buster is. It's the next wave of scraping and creative growth hacking. But they have this really great tool that basically allows you to change the URL from this LinkedIn Navigator jumble into something real. So they basically, on their website, have a little how-to, but I'm going to give you the short version, which is basically collect your LinkedIn cookie and then basically run your list through this, and it basically puts it in a real format of the actual URLs. You can use this list for targeting. You can use this list for outreach. But more importantly, we can enrich the data on this list in order to get actual contacts for the people at the companies of those profiles. So the way that we do that is we use Snav. Snav is, again, really cool. So the idea is they have this feature for social URL search. You upload your list, it's tools, social URL search, paste the new URLs in a CSV document. So basically you're uploading this, and then it basically starts the search, and then you download. And it's really accurate. It's crazy good. Now the next step is we have to clean these emails to make sure they're good. So I use ClearOut. ClearOut works. It's cheap. They did have a lifetime deal. I think that's over now. But you're basically going to verify them. That's easy peasy. And then the last step is I want to start a drip campaign. I want to hit them with that sequence that we talked about, 3. So I'm not sending 1 email, I'm sending 3 because I want to continue to kind of push them a little bit. So you create a new drip campaign, and I think I've already shown this one. This is kind of like a rough look of the sequence. And if you really wanted to get creative, of course, you could go about adding in different triggers. So if somebody opens a message but doesn't respond, or if somebody ends up clicking on a specific link, the idea is that you can make a whole spider web of this stuff to really seem like you're just on your game and you answer everything and you know what they're thinking. It's really cool. I think it's one of those hacks that takes a little bit of time to set up, but the outcome will pay dividends in terms of the amount of people that you'll end up getting to and the amount of people that actually get the experience that you want, which is, hey, I'm always in front of you. I'm always looking for you. Yeah, you got my email again. Or until they basically yell at me to go away, which is they hit the unsubscribe button or say, I don't want your fucking service, leave me alone. And sometimes that happens, but that's why we're in business, right? You got to get a bunch of no's before you get a yes. How am I doing on time? Do you want me to talk about sales funnels?
We have time. We have another 18 or so minutes. Unless people can jump in and ask questions if they want to, but otherwise, there's another chat here. We clearly need this deck. Aren't you exposed?
I thought you said something else for a second, but yeah, no. I mean, these are things that like you have to kind of pick up through doing them, and over time. I don't have all the answers here, and I think trying this out for yourself is the only way to figure out whether or not this is something that works for you. And even if you hire this out, and it is possible to do that, there are people that can set this up for you. You're losing so much by not doing these things, and it's just a matter of taking the time. That's it.
Yeah, it's great. I'd like to add to that because I think it's. I mean, this is true. Obviously, this whole thing, but I guess from my perspective, and maybe you can add to that. Obviously, from your experience, Taylor. But talking from my personal experience, I was sort of head of product in the various startups. Sorry, and also responsible for some of the marketing side of things, mainly on the B2B side. So the mechanical or the automatic and way of dealing with leads is critical, especially for startups at an early stage. Every piece of information is important, and tracking everything is required, even though it's a pain in the ass. No one has the patience to do it, and it requires so much organization skills. So this is a prerequisite from my perspective to be a great CEO. Do you have anything to add to that, Taylor, from your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I battle with that on a regular basis because, the bar continues to raise. Back in the day, you didn't have to really learn anything to go into business for yourself. Now you have to be an expert of spinning all of these different plates. The perfect CEO doesn't exist, but I mean, people will try their hardest. You have to be understanding of the technical side. You need to understand the product. You need to understand sales. You need to understand psychology of people and how to manage and put out fires. And then also, I mean, under the stipulations of early stage startups, most of these companies fail because they don't have this stuff set up and they're trying to do too much manually. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with what you said. I'm absolutely with you.
Great. Any more questions, guys, before we wrap this call? No more questions? No one needs help? Oh, here we go. Catherine.
Hi. So thank you. This was very fascinating talk, and I really appreciate you taking the time. A lot of information, so I'm still sort of processing. But we are Instant Sponsor, and we've developed a global sports sponsorship marketplace that brings together athletes and brands from around the world. And so right now we have a prototype, but not a live platform. And so in terms of the marketing strategy, we're having some trouble because the brands and the teams want to see a live product in order to like move forward with us. So in terms of marketing strategy, what would you say would be the best tools in regards to not yet having a product, but keeping interest high and gaining customers and followers?
Sure. There's two different directions to go here, but one of the more simplistic ways that you see a lot of marketers doing this is creating basically a lead funnel that allows people to convert on the page. You're giving people a bit of interest, saying this is revolutionary, this is going to change the way people do things. Some very short, and they don't have to be real testimonials. The concept is give people a chance to convert on your page so that when the time comes that you feel like you're ready for this MVP, you already have a list of potential customers. And there's a ton of tools for that. There's lead pages. I mean, you could do this with Contact Form 7 on a WordPress site. There's millions of different tools. If you really want to get a little more baller with it, I would say HubSpot is the most overpriced, but probably best working tool for that. You could also do something incredibly simplistic on, I don't know, a Woo, not a Woo site, a Wix site. There's so many tools out there. It depends on kind of your level of technical, I guess. And my first thing would be collecting that stuff. There's a great like Simpsons episode when they're announcing this new show that's coming out, and it's like Gabbo, Gabbo, Gabbo. And the whole idea was they were just giving people a little bit of breadcrumbs before people got excited about that. You see a lot of people doing that on a website called Product Hunt as well. They give you just enough to get excited. And there's tons of blogs out there that basically give you a detailed way of going about creating a really nice campaign on Product Hunt. And that's pre-launch, which is absurd to me because the whole thing is like, isn't it supposed to be a product? And it's like, no, I'm gathering email addresses. It totally makes sense and it works. So yeah, when you're in your building stage, I mean, it doesn't hurt to send people to a place that you can at least convert them to get them as beta testers or at the very least your first customers when you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Nope, can't hear you. Catherine, are you is it me or?
I think she's good. She was like, yep, thanks.
Oh,
Active Campaign does really good
Okay.
forms as well.
Any more questions?
Thank you.
Oh,
Hi.
Oh, I heard somebody for a second.
can anyone hear her? Okay, I'm not sure I can.
Hi, Tomer. Can you hear me?
We can now.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. So thank you so much. Wonderful presentation. I'm like literally texting our sales team. Start searching for people now, and we have to see this. And then our sales lead said that Google just said he violated the policy because he's with a certain tool sequence of I think 1,000 with 1,000 emails. So I guess there are some things that we were of when doing that, right?
Yeah, so I've had numerous debates with the CEO of Find That Lead, this guy Gerard, really eccentric, puts out tons of videos. But you know, the idea is that if you're sending out 1,000 emails at once, it's going to raise flags. And more than likely, a lot of those were bounced. So the person, whoever sent these out, didn't clean the emails before doing that. They skipped the step. So you need to make sure that you're cleaning out emails and not exceed kind of that happy 300 mark. Alternatively, if you wanted to create a new domain with a very similar email address, so the idea would be instead of valuer.ai, I would buy up valuer.co and send emails through that. You can also send out a ton of emails through a million different tools like Email Octopus or SendGrid, which, you know, the problem is a lot of those aren't super validated domain tools, meaning that if you don't have a fair amount of traffic coming from that, a lot of your stuff eventually ends up in the spam folder. But the worst thing that can happen to you at this point is if you're sending out thousands of emails, every future email that is genuine that you're sending to an existing client ends up in the spam folder. You don't want to be there. So again, keep your campaigns, you know, bite-sized, small, 300, no bigger. You don't have to go bigger. and continue to segment from there. But alternatively, if you really want to blast people, buy a new domain, redirect it 301 style. You can have hosting on Amazon for less than $5 a month and blast as many people as you want to. But I would definitely say clean those emails, because it's probably what happened. Yeah, I can't hear if anybody was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, she's muted now, but I don't know. Maybe I think she might have dropped or something. I'm not sure.
Okay.
No, yeah, I don't know. I think she's coming back now. Yeah, she dropped and she's re-entering.
I'm sorry. Somehow it left. Yeah, one more question. So we have started using a number of tools, and at some point it gets quite confusing. And what do you use for CRM? So do you then sync one of the tools you use to send with the CRM? Like how not to get lost? What is kind of the most comprehensive one, or how to make sure that all of them?
Yeah, I got you. So yeah, there's a couple of different slides in here that have a few different things. I think the main one in here is this one. So Salesforce is the standard, right? But it is crazy expensive, especially for a startup.
Very expensive. So,
I'm not paying $80 for a user fee. No way. Like, that's one license. It's crazy. But there are alternatives to that. So Pipedrive is really kind of the new up-and-comer, and I think Pipedrive is continuing to integrate with a lot of other existing tools that are out there. It allows for an open API, which means you can do some really amazing things with it. A shorter version of that would be, I don't know, you could use close.io. There's free ones out there that'll get you by for a little while. If you're really just bare bones, you could use Trello for like a few weeks while you're trying to get your stuff kind of together. But I think for the money, Pipedrive is probably the best value. But once you start adding additional integration features, the price goes through the roof. And that's the same with any of them. Like Sugar CRM is like a free feature, but in order to do a lot of the things that you need to do with a CRM, the price is going to go up. Look, the way that you have to look at this is if you save one deal, if you make one deal, if you stop one customer from churning, this pays for itself. Now, it obviously depends on your customer acquisition cost, lifetime value, and how much your deals are actually worth. But you need to look at it like that. I'd rather be more organized a year from now and feel like I've saved more customers from either leaving or got more customers by giving them a better experience. It's an investment, and using either junk or nothing at all, it's going to do more harm than good. So I don't recommend Salesforce, but I think Pipedrive's okay.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Great. Any more questions? And did you? I mean, is it worthwhile? I don't know. Just one sort of thinking out loud. There's a lot of like techniques that come to my mind that maybe we don't have much time anyway, but just as a couple of things, without going into too much detail. I mean, like, you talked about LinkedIn and also setting up a separate account for doing certain activities, and I can testify to that I because I've got a bit of a coding background, and I remember writing a scraper because I wanted to extract like a lot of profiles from LinkedIn in like a short period of time, and so I did that and got my LinkedIn account banned for 3 days. So from personal experience, it's a pain in the ass, but it's I got what I wanted. I got I don't know, like about 200 or 150 leads in the process, so automatic. So that was quite fun. There are also other tools for finding email addresses, and probably better than me the types of tools that are out there. Like if you give them a name of a person or in a company, then they give you some email addresses. We've used this internally as well at Hype to be able to extract some, to get some email addresses from these systems, and they work okay. Some of them are not real, but I think more than 50% are real. So it's definitely a way to hack it. And I just add one more thing from my not from my experience, actually listening in on another talk, and I'll hand it back to you because you probably have some stuff you want to show as well.
Yeah, real quick.
One of the things. Yeah, sorry, just a quick one. Just something that came up now, and I remembered. One of the things, and you did talk about directories, right? Like being listed in various directories.
Yes.
One of the things I heard at a different talk a while ago, it's not my own, and someone else spoke about it. One of the hacks that they used is normally in directories, it's sort of structured in a way that there are categories, and then there's the pages of the products or the sites. So one of the interesting techniques they used is they created a new category, and when you create a new category, there's no one there, right? So it's a technique to be number one in a category on a directory. It's a very cool way of being number one somewhere, or number two, whatever. Because by the time that the category is approved, and you can always come up with random categories, right?
Yep.
You're going to be the first one. And worst case scenario, within a few days a week, you'll have 2 or 3 others joining in, but you'll have the ability to be one of the top ones or the first ones. So it's a nice hack that I just wanted to share.
Yeah, definitely. And that definitely works from like a local perspective. And for those that are big into SEO, I mean, everything's local in terms of search. So if you are potentially working with a lot of these directories that are kind of small to medium sized, then that absolutely works. I think you will have trouble getting onto a G2 Crowd or any of these kind of larger review sites and trying to create your own category. But I love the idea. I think it definitely could work, you know? It's different. Like Capterra would never create a new segment for you, but never hurts to ask.
Yeah. Sorry, you go. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, like, can everybody see my screen? Is that still up?
Yes, okay. We can.
So and this is the most user-friendly web scraper I'm familiar with. I used to like Octoparse, but it's junk now. But WebScraper.io is really user-friendly. Anybody can get in and learn this. There's tons of YouTube videos that basically take you step by step. But here's a great event hack that I used to do for a while, which was awesome. So we went to Mobile World Congress over in Barcelona. It's one of the biggest events for technology. It's like the CES of Europe. And the concept is they list all of their exhibitors. And if my internet would load, there we go. I get an exhibitor list, and using the same growth hacking techniques, I can scrape every single exhibitor. And if I go into the individual profile, it'll often give an email address, a website, and that's all I need. I just need a website, right? So if it's just the company name, I can also find that domain using like a Clearbit API. But the idea was I emailed roughly 20,000 people prior to arriving and said, hey, I saw you on the list of exhibitors at Mobile World Congress. Want to do coffee? I'd love to meet you in person. I got 5,000 responses from that, right? And that allowed me to pick and choose whoever I met up with. And then I would just respond back automatically to the 4,000 or 4,500 that I didn't want to meet with and say, oh, you know what? I ended up booking up everything, but hey, if you're really interested in like this product, maybe we meet digitally. Why don't you check out my website? And if it's of interest, then let's get something going. You can convert on the website. So just a new way of creating a lead funnel from nothing. And there's a lot of event websites that do this, that just list everybody. And it's like, all right, cool. How can I use this list in order to engage these people to make my time more useful prior to going to that event? And I mean, it's not that hard to set up WebScraper.io, I promise. I mean, give yourself an hour and now you have a new skill, like fuck juggling. This is way cooler. So, so I think it's something everybody should try out at some point.
Absolutely, and I think it's bang on a minute to go. So I don't want to jump over the allocated time. So, but I think it's been very useful, and we'll do the same process as we started doing with some of the other speakers. So we'll set up I'll set up a schedule, and then you guys can sign up to a 15 minutes talk, and then obviously you have to come in prepared. It's going to be 15 minutes because Taylor is really busy, as everybody that comes here and speaks. So. Be respectful of the time and come prepared. Otherwise, that's it. It's great having you, Taylor, on our show. Cool. It's the Hype Accelerator show, and I'm sure the startups got some value out of it. Great value, a lot of tools and techniques. That's the beauty of this particular topic. So thanks also for the startups that attended. Also, I appreciate it. And we will see you guys next week in New York and Haifa, respectively. And that's it. Have a good day.
Yeah. Connect with me on LinkedIn if you want the slides, and we'll talk after, Tomer, with the link for the calendar stuff.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks very much, Taylor. Thanks. See ya. Bye-bye.
See ya.